Her tiny hands clutched her younger brother's shoulders as she tried to shield him, trembling but brave in the only way a child knows how to be brave. The dim light from the chandelier above cast shadows that made the room feel colder than it already was. Tears streaked down her face, and her voice cracked as she pleaded, "Don't hurt us. Please don't hurt us." The stepmother's face twisted, not with compassion, but with a cruel impatience that had been brewing for weeks. To her, these children were reminders of a past she hadn't chosen, barriers between her and the wealth she thought she deserved. She had married a man of fortune, a man who built an empire through sleepless nights and relentless work. But in the absence of his presence at home, she saw an opportunity to bend the house to her will, even if it meant breaking the fragile hearts of the children who lived within it. What she didn't realize was that this particular night was unlike all the others. For the first time in weeks, the millionaire father, the man who had sacrificed time with his family in the name of business, thinking he was providing them the best life, walked through the heavy oak doors earlier than expected. He was tired, weary, and silently wondering if the choices he had made had created a gap between him and his children. He carried the weight of wealth, but lacked the warmth of home, and then he heard it. The sobs, the plea, his daughter's desperate voice echoing through the hall like a knife cutting through his heart. His blood ran cold. He dropped his briefcase where he stood. Something inside him, something deeper than rage, surged to the surface. It wasn't the fury of a wealthy man. It was the roar of a father whose children were being wronged under his very roof. He stormed into the room, his presence filling the space like a thunderclap, and bellowed a word that shook the walls. Enough. The stepmother froze. Her carefully built mask of control cracked in an instant. She had never seen him like this. His voice was no longer calm and calculated, no longer the composed tone of a businessman closing a deal. It was raw, protective, primal. The children's teary eyes widened as they saw their father, not as the man they only glimpsed between meetings and phone calls, but as a shield, as a lion who would never let harm come to them. The little girl collapsed into his arms, sobbing harder now, but this time with relief. The boy buried his face into his father's chest, clinging to him as if afraid he might disappear again. And in that moment, the millionaire father realized something that all the money in the world had never taught him. Wealth meant nothing if his children didn't feel safe, if they didn't feel loved, if they ever had to beg for mercy under their own roof. He looked at his wife, no longer a partner in his eyes, but a stranger who had violated the sanctuary of his family. Words failed him for a moment because the truth was too heavy, but the decision came easily. That night marked the end of her reign in his home. She left, not with the control she once believed she had, but with the bitter knowledge that love had conquered her cruelty. In the days that followed, the mansion felt different. The halls no longer echoed with tension, but with laughter. The father began to change, not with grand gestures, but with the simple things that mattered. He learned to tuck his children in at night, to listen to their stories about school and dreams, to sit at the dinner table without his phone ringing in his hand. He realized that his presence was the greatest fortune he could ever give them. But the most surprising twist came later. The little girl, once fragile and scared, began to blossom in ways that stunned everyone around her. With her father's love surrounding her, she grew into a young woman who carried strength in her voice and compassion in her actions. She would often remind him, sometimes with a giggle, sometimes with tears, of the night he roared. She would say, "Daddy, that was the night I knew you'd never let us go." And he never did, because true wealth isn't measured in bank accounts or business deals. It's measured in the moments when love overcomes fear, when kindness silences cruelty, and when a father discovers that the greatest empire he could ever build is the one that rests safely in his children's hearts.